list of rights for data subjects, and many of these are not new compared to the present regulatory regime, but there are a few new ones. One new opportunity or requirement or burden, depending on your point of view, is the right for data subjects to data portability, where data subjects will have the right to get their personal data transferred to them or exported to them from a controller, where the data concerning the data subject has to be exported or transferred in a structured, commonly used and machine-readable format. So this will be of interest to very many organizations, and both who have the data and those who want to have the data. And Marta has in conversation mentioned several interesting examples, such as consumer playlists from a music platform such as Spotify, where the consumer may want to change his or her platform to another service provider, and may be able to use this right to data portability to get these playlists exported. I can imagine that records from an insurance company, if you had a long record with someone who collects quite a lot of data about you and uses it for you. It could be services perhaps not of purely medical fashion, but related to your health that may not be required by sort of patient rights regulations. But say if you've been working out using various devices and collecting quite a lot of information about your physical characteristics and accomplishments, this could be data that would be of interest to the data subject to have exported, and of interest to service providers to be able to have them imported and provide a better experience and better service to their customers. So the data portability right will be very interesting to see how this is going to be utilized in the economy going forward. More familiar rights is, of course, the right to access. The data subject has the right to find out what processing is being carried out by the controller about the data subject, if any. And there is a detailed list of what information to be presented upon request to the data subject. The data subject has, of course, a right to rectification, to have not just information being bad information taken out, but also to have information added where that is relevant to the processing and has been lacking. The data subject has the right to erasure, or also known as the right to be forgotten, where the controller must cease to continue processing under some circumstances the data subject's personal data. Now, this is not a blanket right. It's not unconditional. For example, it would have to be demonstrated that the controller continued processing of this personal data is not longer necessary. For example, for the carrying out of a contract, or insofar as the processing is necessary in order to comply with the legal obligation, then the data subject does not. That overrides the right of the data subject to have his or her data erased. There are also rights to restrict processing, again, limited and conditional, but still data have certain rights to object to processing. And an important right that we discussed, I think we touched upon when we talked about consent, is the right to withdraw such consent. And here, an important example is that in the course of an agreement, yes, it's a separate legal basis for process data in order to perform a contract with the data subject. But often, the provider who has entered into a contract with the data subject will collect various forms of other consent to other processing from the data subject that is not strictly required to fulfill the contract. Even if you are providing a service and you need some kinds of personal data, such as name and address, for example, in order to invoice, if nothing else. But the provider will often collect more information to provide added on services, or have the opportunity to build, to develop their services, or to provide marketing. So that will be the basis for processing this extra addition that's not necessary for the service itself, is often based on consent. And the data subjects will have the right to withdraw consent for that kind of processing that is not necessarily required to perform the service. So there's a long, sometimes challenging catalog of data subject rights that organizations who find themselves needing to comply with the GDPR will have to sit down and analyze to see that they can respect these rights.